To move into your full potential, your divine feminine, masculine power and purpose, this balanced masculine and feminine energy and purpose, you need to forgive yourself and you need to forgive the world and you need to heal those unprocessed, unloved, feminine and masculine parts of you that are hurting inside. A lot of us have a very strong dominant feminine polarity or masculine polarity, but oftentimes it's a cloaked in shadow. So a lot of us are living out of one or the other, but we're not really balanced in both in a healthy way. We can be living more out of our shadow feminine or more out of our shadow masculine. In my case, I've lived out of both, but both very shadowy. And I would have to say for a lot of years, that feminine shadow, especially I was able to. So, just to give you some context of what this shadow feminine can look like, I was able to I was able to be somewhat productive in the world. I was able to make a basic living. I was able to have my bills paid for the most part, go about my daily life, getting by, but I wasn't happy. I was very much feeling quite powerless and inadequate for many decades. And this had a lot to do with both society's conditioning, the school structure I grew up in, the ideologies that were present there, as well as the ideologies in my household growing up, my parents' strictness and hovering over me, enforcing the idea that I wasn't enough, that my contributions in terms of my schoolwork and what I brought to the households, the ways that I was able to please them, and then other ways that I wasn't able to please them, that just wasn't enough for them and that something was always wrong or broken with me, that they had to hover, especially my dad. He was the one who did that the most. Hover over me and make sure I got every single math problem right in my homework and check and double check obsessively everything I did. If I didn't perform well in a softball match or something, he would be very upset about that or angry, dismissive in his energy. Like he would make me feel like he was very disappointed. I would feel his energy of disappointment in me. He had this thing of sniffing the air and kind of being like, look, just being like letting me know that he was disgruntled and unhappy with my performance. So he did that in school and on the softball field. And that was an exhausting way to live for a very long time, and I learned growing up that I was just never enough. Everything I tried, however much I tried to please him, however good I tried to be, quote unquote good, it was never enough for him. So I really developed this feeling of inadequacy, this feeling of not enoughness, this feeling of always falling short. And I had both a shadow masculine and a feminine. Also, the world created this masculine and feminine too, not just my family structure. We have to be aware that our educational systems, they teach us to be very obedient, right? Like we get rewarded for getting good grades, we get rewarded for raising our hand in the correct way, for asking, getting permission to do every little thing that we want to do as children, like to go to the bathroom, like being always in the sight and the eye line of the adult in charge and just doing the correct thing that's expected at all times. So we learn as little kids that it's not safe to express our authenticity at school, also most of the time in our household as well, unless we were really lucky and we had parents who let us express ourselves and be who we are and encouraged us and then taught us that failure was okay and it was okay to make mistakes. But that's usually not the case. And in school too, like oftentimes it's taught that failure's frowned upon and it's not okay to make mistakes because you'll get sent to the principal's office or you'll be in trouble and your parents will be called, right? So we learn from an early age that it's not okay to be our authentic selves. It's not okay to make mistakes. If we do, there are going to be consequences and if we fail in life. So that is something that we learn very early on. And that creates shadowy aspects within ourselves, some wounded, raw parts that develop a feeling not enough, inadequate. I can never show up. I'm never enough for this person or that person or this circumstance. And this deficit and this lack and this loss. We bring those shadow aspects of not feeling enough, feeling in deficit to our lives, to our young adult lives. We've grown up. We are starting to work. We're starting to go to college, whatever it is. That can get ingrained and instilled further by stuff we're learning in college. It's still an educational system. It tends to be a continuation of that, not enoughness. And then there are different disciplines that also will further root in specific parts and different ideologies that will further create feelings of not enoughness, inadequacy, or in some cases, especially in a lot of the humanities, unfortunately, because we're reading about marginalized communities and oppression and the capitalist structure, the neoliberal structure, which is oppressive to people, especially marginalized groups across society. So women, people with disabilities, people of color, LGBTQIA plus people. It gets oppressive to people who fall outside that quote unquote standard idea of what a traditional mainstream working person is, which is often coded as a white, very confident male person with amazing STEM skills like engineering qualities and whatnot. We learn, especially in humanities, which can disempower us and help us feel like we're victims and instill a belief of not being enough based on how our bodies are marked or happen to be the bodies we were born into or how we've chosen to express ourselves in our bodies, whatever that is. It can help us to feel even more disempowered and not enough and inadequate when it comes to how are we going to make it in life in the world if we don't have this quote unquote certain type of body and like natural confidence and like certain type of just posture and ethos and like even our hair down to every little tiny little thing that maybe isn't considered like that mainstream traditional like quote unquote privileged position. There's a lot of literature out there, especially in the arts and humanities, social sciences, and whatnot, that actually pick all of these mainstream positionalities and like what's quoted norms apart in a way that helps to shed light on how damaging and oppressive, like mainstream capitalist, neoliberal ideologies happen to be in our society. And this is not to negate the fact that they are oppressive and they do real harm to people. I was very much attracted to those narratives earlier on in my life, in my 20s and 30s. I felt very oppressed by the world because I felt very beaten down for every little difference I had. Gender, obviously, being an obvious one, but other ones as well. So it can feel more intense for those who are considered different in lots of ways, in intersectional, multiple ways. So it can be very attractive for people who have felt marginalized in some way, whether it's in many ways, big, small ways, even just a little bit, learn more about how this marginalization, how oppression in society happens through these large institutions, systems, and structures. It's a way of attempting to heal a woundedness within ourselves, like an unprocessed wound that we may feel within ourselves from our childhood, from all the painful experiences we had from feeling not seen, perhaps by our relatives, by adults in positions of power in society when we were youthful, who didn't see our beauty and our goodness and our authenticity and what we had to offer. In fact, they punished us or put us down or made fun of us for being different. And that created a deep, painful wound within ourselves that we shut down around, that we locked inside because it was such a vulnerable part of us. And that part has been repressed and it's hurting inside. It's only natural that if you have that kind of a wound, which I had and still have to a degree, but I'm working through it and releasing it more and more, it's understandable that part of you would be seeking some kind of explanation of how this all happened and how unfair and how unjust it was. And that part of you really wants to be seen and acknowledged and how much harm has been done to it, how much it's felt like it's had to suppress its authenticity to survive in this very challenging, at times very oppressive world. And with these systems and with these adults who weren't capable of seeing us and mirroring back our goodness, they were oftentimes mirroring back our not so goodness, what they perceived as not good about us, right? But it didn't mean that there was anything ever really broken about us or that we were wrong or flawed. Like each of us is beautiful and wonderful and whole and complete. Ultimately, we come to believe that we're not by our experiences in life. And then we can be called into later on when we're young adults or even older adults, be called to look for some kind of answer, some kind of explanation for why you've lived your life has been the way it has for why you experienced all the oppression that you did and all of the difficult circumstances and why you just feel so small and little and not enough and why so much of what you wanted to experience in life hasn't come to fruition. You've had a lot of difficulties and challenges, roadblocks at times. You feel perpetually frustrated and oftentimes like a victim of systems and institutions and communities and people who don't get you, who can't see you, who don't support you, and who really just want you to keep working like a cog in the machine to fulfill their ends and goals and needs.